Good evening, everybody. Welcome to Radio Sofia. Radio Sofia is a platform operating on the Discord mobile app and desktop browser to host discussions, talks, movie and book reviews, story and poetry recitals, etc. on the socio-economic and political issues. The platform intends to bring academics and general public together to educate each other. And in one such attempt this week, the 16th and 17th May 2020, on Radio Sofia, we are going to discuss the topic of migration and work in the context of India. I am Kranti Nanduri, a PhD student at IIM Calcutta, and I shall be the moderator for these discussions. I am very happy to introduce the speaker of the day, Ms. Srujana Boddu, a PhD student at Madras Institute of Development Studies. While her work focuses on segmentation in the urban informal labor markets, she is interested also in the topics of development studies and livelihoods in general. Srujana and I go actually long way back to Hyderabad Central University, where both of us studied integrated masters in social sciences and economics. I'm really glad that she has accepted to do this. Srujana, thank you very much for joining us today, and it's a great pleasure to have you with us here.
Yeah, thanks, Kranti.
Right. She'll talk about an introduction to the topic of migration and work. Yeah, Srujana, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kranti, for this lovely opportunity and platform to share our thoughts. Yeah, well, when I was asked to talk about migration and work, I was super confused actually in the beginning on what to deal with and what to talk. Given the way this such a huge and broad topic to deal with, we're all there's no beginning nor an end to this discussion. We can possibly talk about everything and anything concerned in the patterns of migration, state or developmental challenges and concerns. But however, when we have decided to narrow it down as an introduction, I'm here to introduce the types of migration and work patterns. Anyway, given there's a diverse group in us, among us, I'm here. I'm going to try and be very simple and easy. I'm trying to keep it as simple as I can. And today, I'm going to give an introduction on migration and work, and hopefully, like tomorrow's talk by Prof. Mohanty will help us to attach the strings and complete our discussion. So, yeah, before we get into work and migration trends, let us first introspect and question what exactly is migration. Who are all migrants? On the face of it, well, the term refers to those people or individuals who move from place to place, new locations and spaces for work opportunities or studies, or even intentions for better livelihoods and so on. If we go through this term, we can all consider ourselves as migrants, right? But who are we talking about in particular today? In order to understand the type of migrants and migration pattern or migration, what type of migration it is, I think we have to ask, try and answer three basic things. Who are we talking about? What are the class distinctions of these people we are talking about? Which class do they belong? What are their socioeconomic characteristics? And the reason of migration, why are they migrating? What is the cause behind? And also, of course, how long are they migrating? What is the duration? So once we try and answer these three questions, we'll be able to enough try and answer, tell which kind of migrant is he or she and why are they migrating. So there are several underlying causes for migration, which we're all aware of already. Arguments are around. People move for livelihood, some for diversification of household income, some for savings, some for in search of survival and so on. So this umbrella term cannot be used uniformly by every type of migrant. We need to note and always keep in mind the basic characteristics to define it. So I think contextualizing migration as a term is important to understand who migrants are and then look the migrants through the lens of the respective characteristics. So let me also put it out today when we are talking about migration and work. We are talking about those migrants who move to towns or cities in search of work and opportunities, and those who are engaged in informal sector or activities in the labor market as such. We're considering both non-skilled and skilled migrants with vulnerable socioeconomic conditions, backward communities or groups, who are frequently around in search for work. So having said these, now why does migration take place? Historically, Yeah. So historically, when we have to answer this question, firstly we can tell there are different trends and types of migration taking place. Mostly, when we hear, what we hear is they migrate to uncover better livelihood options. Given that urbanization and industrialization doesn't take place and occur equally at the same pace or rate, we have labor mobility towards those places, which can possibly help give them options to survive or find work for that matter. Of course, India being a labor surplus country, there is heavy movement of labor between geographical areas for work or in search of work. So this may be from rural to rural areas or rural to urban and vice versa. So in India, we see all kind of migration patterns, intrastate, interstate, and even outside the country. However, for our understanding today, we're going to stick, as I said, for migration for work within the country, and we contextualize our discussions around this topic. Um, Also, now that we've seen how to understand who types of migrants are and what is migration, why does it happen, I think let us go to the migration wave in India. Statistically and in terms of magnitude, um, if we consider the percentage of migrants in country, it's always undercounted, right? So it's of course mostly due to the challenges and pertaining to report them or trace them and so on. However, like this country, as many has it to say and argue, has witnessed the age of mass migration. Several scholars and arguments have been pointing it out so. And why is it that? Why have they said it so? Because of the onset of from the onset of market reforms and neoliberal policies, the inequality gap has only been increasing. So this the opportunities and economic activities have only been concentrated in particular regions and certain spaces. So the structural change has only led to proper work or livelihood opportunities or options being concentrated in cities or say medium towns, suburbs, or even peri-urban areas, as we can say. Also, parallelly, the work and alternative employment options are not being available in many regions due to various range of factors which we all are aware of and acknowledge as well, such as this agrarian distress or concerns with rural employment opportunities, landlessness, household conditions, and so on. So these factors have made them look outside for to outside world for better opportunities. As per the available data, if we consider 2011 census, the total number of internal migrants in India would be uh, a whooping number of 450 million or so. But actual number would be even higher than this, as I said earlier, like the issues of tracing or count, giving up a statistical magnitude wise. But even say if we are to catch this statistics and if we are to follow this number, still, I mean, the number is quite high. And then even from the last decade, that is census 2001 to 11, there's been around 32% increase in this number from one decade. And most of the states, I think, which amount of these trends is UP, MP, Bihar, and then to an extent Rajasthan, Gujarat, West Bengal, and so on. Um, Also now, having set the magnitude and why does the migration take place, so I think let us see about the types of migration in a very broad sense first. So of course we're talking about migration for work, and besides it being there, there are other forms of voluntary and forms of migration, right, for education, marriage, and so on. On the other hand, of course, there are migration, I mean, forced migration to be precise, due to natural disasters, calamities, and even displacements due to projects, I mean, which is very crucial to consider and study. It's important as well. But yeah, to stick with our topic today on migration and work, I think we can broadly tell that migration for work is, as we all know, as we all much discuss about it, it's about distress migration, which is most important. And to say, and also to also acknowledge it is important that there is migration for diversifying household income or say establishing they are migrating for work to establish for business, such as the movement of mercantile capital and so on. Well, it's important to acknowledge that these types of migration exist too, and also understand the fact that most important and the most vulnerable out of all being the distress migration or say movement of work with uncertain future and probability for work, and this accounts to the most of them in the numbers. So yeah, as I mentioned above, to understand the type of migration, it is important to, and it is, the key is to look into the reasons, duration, and the class distinctions, and then tell why are they migrating. So before getting into the main focus today, that is the distance migrant workers and their additional conditions, one has to also know and touch upon mobility of mercantile capital and the associated migration there. I want to briefly touch on this also, this aspect as well. So, see, they also migrate for work, but what is different here? They don't migrate in search of livelihood options as such, which is what we have to remember. They migrate for, say, establishing businesses and so on. There are very few there are few communities, quite few communities in India who has trajectories of migration from decades, generations altogether, who move to cities and large towns to establish themselves or their business out there. So they have capital with them. They belong to certain caste groups and communities. To elaborate briefly, I think we can also quickly understand through talking about Marwari communities or even Gujaratis and their migration trajectories or patterns. We all know them in our cities, right? I mean, respective metropolitan cities. We see their small to large establishments being out there. So most of Marwaris belong to northern Rajasthan, and they have roots tied to Jains or Vaishyas caste as such. So they operate with strong community network ties. Even if we look into the names of huge business outlets and brands in India, for instance, such as Singania, Sagarwals, Oswals, Goenkas, I mean, they're all Marwaris. Business is their livelihood, and given the conditions not being conducive in their respective native place, for example, say I've said that Marwaris belong to Rajasthan. They're mostly, I think, concentrated in the belt near Barmer, Jaisalmer, so, and also even those who are located near Kutch side of Gujarat, they migrate. They migrate with capital. They have strong network connections, and they must move all over, with their establishments of different types. I mean, also the famous surnames in India, the business giants like Ambani, Adani, Birlas, all of them are Marwaris. So, of course, the size of business and type depends on the capital or connections they have. The same works with Parsis also as trading communities, or say Chettiars in Tamil Nadu as money lending communities within the state. So all of them have old association of business with their exclusive caste order. Their networks are quite old and historically extended over territories, which is widespread, much beyond their home base. Quickly, something I even know closer is the other case, that is migration from coastal Andhra to the Hyderabad city around the senior lines. So, at the time of 1960s and 70s, say for an example, just when there were several public sector industries that were being set up in Hyderabad, the business communities and say rich peasant families started to migrate from coastal Andhra to set up the trading centers in and around Hyderabad. While on the contrary, the labor groups from Telangana migrated for work opportunities in this manufacturing setup. I think this is the thing we have to keep in mind with regard to migration. On the basis of doing business with community ties, of course, this can be a different angle to examine. So yeah, as I've said, one angle we should keep in mind is this. And then, of course, there's again migration for work to help diversify household income and increase remittances, etc. There are some groups, say, I think some areas in western and eastern coastal areas, some belt in UP and Rajasthan particularly, the areas are known as remittance economies. I mean, they're distinct as to understand the migration is not the reason of underdevelopment of the region, but historically, I think there are some trade routes and trajectories of migration from those areas to other parts of the country as a part of diversifying household income and so on. I'm not going to touch much on migration for diversifying household incomes and as such here. As such, like our concern right now is mostly on distance migration for work and livelihood options. But however, I had to put it out there, the earlier types and patterns as well, to know and understand that while they being out there as mentioned, however, the huge and major section and part is with regard to those workers who are in search of work opportunities to survive for the daily survival. What we see today, for example, is that, right, due to unforeseen conditions of lockdown and COVID getting all over, the migrant exodus and struggle for survival assets. These stories and experiences accounts the most of migrants in our country. For 93% of population or even more being in informal workforce, most of them include migrants, divided into different types of work such as own account or self-employed workers, casual, or even be it regular but yet temporary and unprotected workers in spaces wide across. So with this, we can again broadly look into within this bracket. I think we can broadly look into again, three different types of patterns. One is seasonal migration or circulation process, temporary or semi-permanent migration, or even permanent migration in some cases. Of course, there are footloose migrants as well. Firstly, footloose migrants, if we consider their case, one can assess that they are among the most vulnerable workers who are, say, millions still in the country, with uncertainty glooming on them as on like what can be their next workplace and what can be their stay and all. Say today there is a construction coolie opportunity. Today I have it, so I know that I have an opportunity to work for next 3 to 4 months. I'm here. I get to know through my community networks or say employer or ministry I'm connected with. I go there, I stay there for 3 4 months, and then I get transported to another place for another next few weeks or months, and it goes on. So with migration all over the country, not just within states, but I think across regions. So of course there are footloose migrants, and then we have seasonal migration also. Another aspect which is less little spoken is this. As many arguments come through, the seasonal migration takes place to cope up from loss of work or non-availability of work in certain or specific months in the year. Mostly, this labor circulation process is temporary and takes place in agricultural households, poor or marginal farmers. Like when those months in the year when they don't have work, so they temporarily they circulate, they migrate to the nearby medium to large towns or cities for work, mostly in construction, and then they get back to home by the time they find work in their native place. Uh, Quickly to elaborate, I think an example, something I know much clearly is the case of small and marginal farmers in Madras district of Telangana state. They migrate to Hyderabad, which is quite near for construction work, and even to stand as uh, workers, daily wage workers in labor chalks or addas, what you call, during the months of November. And then every year, June, they go back to their native source village. Yeah, so having said footloose migrants and then there's seasonal migration, again, there's temporary or other migrants to cities and suburban areas for work. So, for searching work across in manufacturing and service sector spaces, all of this, I mean, types of migrants, they may be short term or longer, semi-permanent or permanent, as many call it, happen only because there are no work opportunities in source village, or clearly those who do not possess means of production and in need to survive and search livelihood through working in informal sector. To be precise, working doing informal work rather. Engaging with these class distinctions, I think, and shared experiences, the reason for migration, what is the reason for their migration is what can help us, as I mentioned before, to distinguish between migration due to distress or for survival and livelihood diversification as such. But what we must not miss today, like what we must not miss today is the defining features and issues of concern for such migrants. First of all, be it the case of short-term or long-term migration, the migrants are exposed to harsh working conditions and low wages. Um, Most of them lack bargaining power as such. They are in the unknown territory without any support system. India being its, of course, surplus labor economy, while migration may be a mass or high phenomenon, and while migrants mostly enter cities through their system of social networks, they yet still lack dignity in working spaces and any kind of strong, solid support system in the urban areas. Why is this so? Of course, we are also aware there are varied levels of discrimination they face, both in working and living spaces. They're subject to control and exploitation by employers. We are aware of this. They're just considered as an ideal source for labor supply in most cases, subject to work without contract and labor and social security. So they have very bare minimum earnings and live only based on their daily or weekly basis of payment. And also their lives reflect their low wage aspirations also as well, right? Due to the case of past income history or works or deprivation, like they today what we witness is the same, the bare minimum and lack of income sources with no certain future for finding work, and in most cases, there's no minimum to survive in such kind of unforeseen hazardous circumstances. So for these migrants, the migration isn't a choice for them; it's only option instead for survival, which is molded, of course, as per the advantage, as they say, capitalists to use them and control them. We all agree on this fact. And we hear, of course, a lot of instances these days, witness stories and experiences in news in recent days on how employers, despite of not paying the migrant workers for work before the lockdown, instead are forcing them to continue work further, and then only they will kind of release the payments or installments. So such kind of tactics are being used by the employers to squeeze in further labor. Now, in such kind of hazardous and uncertain situations, besides already vulnerable survival options spaces, no options, it's only causing further uncertainty for them, and such kind of dismal conditions. Now, well, yeah, uh, I think one thing I would want to stress before I end this is like what one question we all have to ask right now. It is like, why are migrants going back? Why is it happening? The whole question of why did they have to come to, I mean, why did they have to migrate to cities?
Srujana, you're not audible.
I think she went on mute then.
Yes, yes, yes. Let me just give her a call. Just
Am I audible now?
Yes, yes. You
Oh, I
were
don't know how
you
did it
went on
go.
to mute. It's okay. Continue, please continue. Yeah.
So how long was this the case?
No, no, just 1 minute or so.
Yeah, okay,
That's
okay. So I think I'm sorry. I think I just went to
that's
mute.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, migration not being a choice for them and it's only option for survival. So of course we all agree to the fact that the employers use them to control them, not pay them wages on time, or delay their payments as it's happening right now. Or or tell that I'm gonna release your wage in installments and you have to continue the work. So these are only tactics which are employed right now, and already with a that kind of degraded living and working spaces, vulnerable survival options. So this kind of uncertain and gloomy situations are only further aggravating their concerns, their living options. So one question we all have to ask right now is like, why are migrants going back? First of all, why did they have to enter the urban areas or towns for work, and now why are they going back? So the lack of strong state and its interference is one main reason in providing protection to workers, or be it social security, creating sustainable livelihoods. These only tell us the way how state has been evading its responsibilities in further aggravating the already present concerns. This is not new, of course. If you want to ask me, what is it like right now, which is happening and which has not been there before. These situations have been there from quite some time, and these are only increasing as the days pass by, but in no way getting better. From the onset of the neoliberal economic reforms, we say what we already know is increase in the huge corporations, corporate giants taking hold of every sector possible, and in turn is only are only going with the motive of mushrooming with profits. The state has left out its responsibilities completely on enforcing or regulating any activities. Further, also it has left out on the well-being of its own citizens to the hands of market. What we see today, in fact, is the state going in excess with the corporations. What we can call it as crony capitalism, taking over every sector possible. From health to education to housing to the worker issues to employment, everything. Every sector is being turned out as basically as a marketplace right now. So, with state not providing any employment options, the migrants, of course, are only left out to work in hands of these capitalists, right? So, only to not work in these kind of opportunities which are available to them. And the entire question of why migration is taking place and why are they going back now can only tell us more and more on why strong states intervention is needed in several of these spheres. So yeah, it's time we have to re-engage with all this kind of present discourses, question why the distress calls are all around with migrants across the country for basic essentials such as food and shelter. This is the time, we have to question, and also we have to, keep contemplating on the mainstream discourses. Yeah, I think I end with this. I mean, yeah, we also see the news outlets reporting on reverse migration happening right now, right? We should see and engage with these kind of terms and processes as well. Why is it called reverse migration when migrants are going back to their own native place and their village is not going to see them as migrants, right? Such things also, I think, require quite some, examination. Yeah, I hope tomorrow's talk by Professor Mohanty which deals with crisis and challenges. I hope the discussions can be complete by then. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Srujana. Thank you so much actually for keeping it as basic as possible, because this was also meant for a general audience, and you have very clearly explained the ABCs of migration, if I might put it that way, on what are the different types of migration, why do people migrate, and you have also focused on what distress migration is, etc. And in fact, you are very right. This is the high time that you need to look at the issues and you need to look at the state intervention and the role of the state itself in the generation of work, etc. And in fact, most of us have been ignorant to this, and for a long time, these migrants have always been there, but suddenly now they have taken the center stage in the debates. In fact, in my own hometown, I never knew that. I always knew only there are Rajasthani migrants who make jalebi, but I never knew that there are also migrants from Uttar Pradesh, migrants from Bihar, and thanks to COVID, now everybody knows who are all there and where are they living and what conditions are they living. I mean, I don't know it's a fortunate or an unfortunate situation, but that is the truth. And I think now again there is this policy discussion that is going to be there on migration as a central element of discussion. And now with this, I open discussion for question and answers. If anybody has a question or a comment, you may either put it in the chat box or unmute your microphone and talk. Yeah, the floor is open for the discussion. Srujana, do you have any idea about the statistics of the skilled and unskilled, or anybody else who's on the conversation? Because I am myself unsure of the statistics of on the number of skilled versus unskilled.
But right. I think they said that less than 2% or so of the workforce, active workforce population are being engaged in vocational training as such, and less than 7% or something, I think, are being engaged in informal vocational training, not formal. So most of them, say 95% of them, did not receive any kind of training. That much I think I'm aware of. Right. I think the question is posted 1 second.
Yeah, so she's asking the reason being there is an outflow and inflow between two states, example Rajasthan and UP.
Kranti, just to say that yes. That numbers on skilled and unskilled migrants are very difficult to come by.
Right.
And if you want a better fix on the numbers themselves, Ravi Srivastava has done a lot of work on this. Ravi Srivastava used to be formerly at CSRD JNU and is currently at the Institute of Human Development, Delhi. And so he has tried to map some of the kinds of numbers that Srujana was talking about. So how much of it is from within the state, how much is interstate, how much is circulating, how much is not, and so on and so forth. So those broad numbers you'll probably get, but skilled and unskilled is very different. In any case, this whole thing about skilled and unskilled, I find a little problematic. A farmer is skilled in something, agricultural labor is skilled in something else. Somebody is working in a factory, learns on the job and becomes skilled. Right. Now, if that factory closes and he or she has to go somewhere else, that skill goes with him, with the factory, and maybe it's still utilizable in some other kind of job.
Right.
So these are kinds of binaries which sometimes are not very useful. Now, which is not to say that there isn't a category called skilled, there isn't a category called unskilled, but very often it's kind of defined by the kind of work you do and what is the nature of supply and demand in that particular job.
Right.
And the fact that certain kinds of jobs will not be done by certain kinds of folks and so on and so forth. And that's what I would say. But I mean, Ravi's been working on this now for a while, and so there is a reasonable fix on those numbers. The economic survey of last year, not this year's, tried to give you a snapshot of what is happening in terms of migration. It's not. I mean, they sort of put together various sources and literature and all that. But I'd say that anybody who wants a reasonable idea about the extent of these numbers will do very well to look at Ravi's work. And there are others who are also working in the area of migration, you can look at, but certainly.
Sure. Right. Thank you, Professor Mohanty. Yeah, so Akash has another question. So Srujana, so he's asking, what is your assessment of the future trend of wages in the agricultural sector, given the reverse migration due to COVID?
Yeah, right. So first of all, I mean, percentages, stats-wise, I mean, I really don't know as such, what can be the implications as such. But broadly, if you kind of keep the question as, what can be economic impact or implications, in agricultural sector due to the whole thing of, reverse migration due to the, fallout of COVID. First of all, I think there are like a lot of arguments these days coming. Okay. So I think there are a lot of arguments as such on the COVID, the impact of COVID as such, the economic impact on agricultural sector.
Right.
So to tell about the future trend of wages as such, no, I don't have any right now the statistics or aspects. I'm not aware of anything like that as well.
Right. The traditional neoclassical economics puts forth Harris Todaro Ranisway models to study migration for understanding the Indian story. Are these useful?
Yeah, I think the economic, I mean, I haven't gone to technical and subject aspects such wantedly. But if you would want to go through that and you would want to see that you want to take those kind of economic theories like Harris Todaro or even the new economics of the economics of new migration, all the theories. Like most of these models operate on choice-based, individualistic choice or household choices exercising, for migration, and then kind of tallying the future benefits or say what kind of once you migrate to the say urban areas, what kind of possible better off employment opportunities you would get once you migrate. So I think these kind of models operate on those lines, and I really don't think you can contextualize those in the Indian scenario. Primarily because see the migrants here out there, as I've also mentioned, the majority of them are not migrating because they have an option. So they don't have an option, right? Here, it's not a choice. They're not exercising a choice. They basically are not having a possible, livelihood opportunity back there in their source native village. So I think we have to keep that in mind before, as I said, I think we have to keep that in mind. The reason and the cause underlying migration is very important to understand. If we can, that I think that itself will answer our query. I mean, when we can. Kind of apply the models.
Right. Also, one more point that comes to my mind is that the wage differential that Harris Todaro model talks about, that having a higher urban wage is what.
Is the assumption.
It's not. Yes, but it need not be the option at all. And also, the assumption is being that if the labor or I mean, the peasant labor, the households have already broken down, and then there is this differentiation in the labor market that has already come in the agriculture sector, and wage labor has formed in the agriculture sector, and then you are moving to an urban area, the rural urban migration. So the logics of the rural urban migration, which are put forth by these models, I don't think really holds in this
Yeah,
context.
itself will discard itself. I mean, those don't hold true. We don't migrants. I mean, there's not like urban wage. Once you migrate, is higher than the rural wage. So that
Right,
kind of yeah.
right.
Yeah, but Kranti, I mean, the
So
urban-rural differential in income levels would hold, right? I
yeah,
mean,
income levels it
I mean,
holds, but is that
the Harris-Sudaro model says
right?
that urban wages are higher than rural wages,
Right,
and so that's why you get migration to happen,
right,
right?
right.
So that would hold. And it is to the extent that it's rural to urban, that again would fit that stylization, right?
Right, but is it always the case? I do not know.
Well, personally, I mean,
Right.
I'll touch on this tomorrow a little, but
Right.
I don't personally use Harris-Sudaro as a framework for a whole variety of reasons,
Right.
among which is the fact that you know it actually treats the agricultural sector as being in equilibrium,
Right. Right.
right? So that the wage in that cultural sector is in equilibrium, but is lower than the urban sector, and so on and so forth, and so on and so on. So for me, I see this slightly differently, and as a result of longer-term structural features that propel this. And you will also, of course, remember that Harris-Sudaro gives you an urban unemployment outcome.
Right. Right.
Yes, so there's no unemployment in rural areas, but there's urban unemployment for a variety of reasons.
Right.
So to answer Akash's question, I'd say that the, the nature and dynamics of of uh, of migration, and the fact that it happens from low wage, low productivity areas to relatively high wage, high productivity areas, is that dynamics is not something that is captured by Harris-Sudaro.
Right. Right.
Make it but
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll come back to this tomorrow.
Sure. Sure. Yeah. Are there any more questions, or anybody would like to add any comments? If how does one define a migrant? Is there consensus on the same, or are there multiple versions? Just to, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
And yeah, you were telling something.
No. That's his question. Would you like to answer?
Yeah, I think that's what I think I started off with,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's okay. So that's what we have to also think about while answering. This whole term and definition of migration, we can't really apply to every possible type of migration. I mean, when we are using it, we have to use it very cautiously. That's when I told, like, I think that's when I think it's very important. I mean, uh, uh, what kind of migration is that? Why is that happening? What is the reason and cause behind it? What are the socioeconomic characteristics of the class distinctions of person who's migrating? I think those kind of questions if we answer, that's when we can kind of understand which kind of migrant he or she is. And of course there are multiple versions, and then uh, you know the consensus, it's not, there's no consensus on the, the definition of migrant is what I think we can understand. I think some works by, say, Ajante Khan and I think by not International Labour Organization, under report on migration and refugees by, I don't know, I think I'll recheck and I can tell back in the group, I think those reports kind of dwell on these issues, can we use the definition of migrants on everything, what are the different definitions, across that, all this, why are there multiple versions, who do immigrants fall under, who do migrants fall under, who do, refugees fall under, I think that kind of thing.
And thank you everybody for joining the session. And tomorrow at 6 p.m., Professor Mohanty will talk about the crisis of migration today and the road ahead. And that would complete the discussion that we have started today. Thank you very much for joining. Thank you, Srujana, and thank you, Professor Mohanty, for joining the discussion today.